Hi, my name is Katie Stapko, and welcome to my MFA Thesis exhibition at San Diego State University. The name of the exhibition is Intra Text, and the entire exhibition is based upon a typeface that I designed, which I've titled Model Q. This typeface is a little bit different in that it has 312 alternate glyphs. And what that means is each letter, uppercase and lowercase, has 5 alternate versions that I designed. This is a newer trend in typography now, where the designer has more control over the glyphs that they decide to use. So, for example, if I don't like the letter S for one particular piece, I can choose a different variation of that letter S that better works with my design. So the reason I called this typeface Model Q is because I was inspired by the philosophical concept that Umberto Eco wrote about in his book Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language. And this concept is the idea that everything that we understand in the world, be it words, symbols, signs, pictures, the meaning of those things are dependent upon other symbols, signs, pictures, etc. And what that does is that there's really no ultimate thing that everything refers back to, and this creates this really complex set of meaning that we have that's completely reliant upon context. So my typeface becomes more and more abstracted as you move through the alternate versions until version 5 or variant 5 becomes so abstracted that you can't actually understand what the letters are on their own, and instead are reliant upon the context of other letters for meaning. So I'm trying to convey in my exhibition this sense of this infinite net of possibilities. And I do that by showing my typeface off in different mediums for examples. And the first example is a printed book that I call an infinite folding book. And this book explores the process that I went through developing this typeface from start to finish, beginning with my calligraphic formal exercises through the 13 versions that the font went through as I was designing it. This sort of infinite folding possibilities is a reference to this idea of the Model Q and this notion that there is no truth or beginning or end, and that everything is reliant upon each other. I also use the symbol of the labyrinth in the book as sort of a metaphor for the beginnings and ends and dead ends and things that I reached while I was designing this typeface. The second piece is an interactive exhibit that uses buttons that run through 2 different microprocessors and a computer using a software called processing. And this exhibit allows the user to shuffle randomly through all of my glyphs, and the more users that are involved in the piece, the more interesting the piece becomes, and the more likely that we are to come upon a word. So in some ways it's a metaphor for communication between 2 people, and this sort of randomness adds again to that Model Q, that feeling of infinite possibilities and infinite choices when we're trying to express something or communicate with someone. The third piece is a space piece, so we've moved from print to screen and interaction to a space work that is in a dark room, and as the user passes through the room, they're given a headlamp, so there's this feeling of excavation. And I've screen printed letters from my font onto CNC router cut acrylic and twin wall polycarbonate plastics. And as the user moves through the space, they shine their light through the pieces, which then casts shadows on the walls. Because it's user activated, these shadows are dynamic and move, much like this idea of the Model Q, where text is fluid and meaning is sort of fluid and dependent upon context and the user themselves. The fourth and final piece is an animation where I also explore the process of creating the font. And through a reductio ad absurdum style, we start off with a very boring PowerPoint that says how to design a typeface in 10 simple steps. But through the process of this absurdity, things begin getting much more crazy, and the user or viewer realizes that designing a typeface is anything but simple and anything but 10 steps. What I hope the user or viewer takes away from the experience of coming to my exhibition is this notion that the very texts that we read are changeable and fluid. We can read a text one day, come back and read that same exact text the next day and get something completely different from it. And I think that my typeface is a way to sort of deal with the saturation of messages today. We're always surrounded by texts through advertisements, smartphones, television. Everywhere we look, we see words. And it's a really big challenge for graphic designers today to try to fight through that saturation of imagery. And I think in a way, my show is trying to deal with this new kind of fight for attention. And it's very important as graphic designers that we get that 5-second or 2-second or 0.005 second moment of attention from the user where we actually can get their attention and then have them read the piece. And perhaps if we stimulate people's brains in a different way with a typeface where they have to fill in the blanks, they might be more likely to notice a piece of work hanging on a wall or on a screen, and might become more likely to interact with that piece. As graphic designers, we're facing lots of new challenges today with all the new technologies and trying to deal with these technologies. So the exhibition works 2 or 3 different levels. It's a way of exploring philosophy and literature, and this idea of trying to change people's perceptions of text around us and challenging the notion that texts are concrete. And then also as a way for graphic designers to maybe challenge them to try something new with their work and sort of break outside of this very clean, easy to read aesthetic, which I appreciate greatly, but perhaps it's time for a change. So that's what my show's exploring.